For the third year and counting, Richard Skipper has been celebrating the artists you love.
And what are some of the things that you've really
run out of time, and we've got to talk about your latest. I want to go back a little bit, first of all, and celebrate a true legend.
Richard Skipper is all about celebrating life, art, and his guest body of work.
And did you pursue performing opportunities while you were in high school?
Please join us while he showcases these diverse and talented individuals. Here's Richard Skipper.
Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. Who or what are you celebrating today? Today, believe it or not, is National Siamese Cat Day. That's something to celebrate. I actually had a Siamese cat once. But today it was raining in New York. And in the theater, traditionally, if it rains, that means it's good luck in the theater. It's great that the theaters are thriving. I've been reading, thanks to Ken Davenport and his blogs, which I highly recommend. I've been reading that the grosses for Broadway theaters are better and hotter than ever. So that's something to celebrate. I also want to celebrate the fact that one of my greatest entertainers is coming back to New York. I want to share something with you, and I've shared this on previous shows before. And the great Carol Channing once said, there are entertainers and there are performers. She said that a seal is a performer. A seal is interested in one thing and one thing only, and that's getting a fish. It will balance a ball on its nose. It will flap its fins. It will do anything just to get that fish. But an entertainer is focused on the audience. It's always about giving its all to the audience. And that is the epitome of Ken Page. And I am so excited. And once I saw that Ken Page was here, and of course he got the memo, we're both in Carol Channing red tonight. Speaking of red. Yes, we're both in red. And in the interim, while from the moment that he came on and signed on, and I went on and I signed up for, I got 2 great tickets for your show. So I am so excited. All of the premium tickets are sold out. Are you aware of that?
Yes. I was not aware of that. Thank you for telling me.
You are
I can breathe a little easier.
I did get some great tickets, but you are sold out in the premium seats. So because this is Richard Skipper Celebrates, that's something to celebrate. But what else are you celebrating tonight, Ken?
Well, let's see. What am I celebrating? I'm celebrating that I'm talking to you. So there's that, because we've wanted to do this, and I'm so glad it's actually happening. And as far as work-wise, we'll throw that out and get it out of the way. A lot of good stuff coming up later in the month. I'm after we do 54 Below, May 4th, which is very exciting.
May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with me. That's right. We're doing a cast recording. John Yap, who I'm sure you're familiar with.
Oh, yes.
He does all this wonderful, recordings of all the Broadway shows, and little, sometimes not as much known, but really great shows that should have been and are by him recorded. We're doing a complete recording of the Fantastics, and we're doing the whole show, the music and the dialogue. Tom Jones is working with us. Louis Cleal is playing El Gallo, and this wonderful young lady who is a dear friend, known as she was a little bitty baby, Elizabeth Teeter, who is now in Beetlejuice, is doing the girl, and Telly Young is doing the boy, and on and on and on. And it's very exciting. And we do that around the 23rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere around there of May. So that's coming up. And let's see what else. Lots of good things, I'm happy to say. We're supposed, of course, this is way off, but we're doing Nightmare Before Christmas again in London, further off into the year, and lots of good stuff. We'll get to. We'll all talk about it.
Oogie boogie, oogie boogie,
oogie boogie, baby.
The gift that keeps on giving.
That is, I was glad you said that, because that's what my dear friend and representative lawyer and every Mark Sendroff, he's everybody's lawyer.
Oh, we love Mark.
Yes, we love Mark, and that's what we call it, the gift that keeps on giving, because the movie was done, my God, in 95, something like that. 95, I want to say. And it just keeps going. We do these live concerts where we sing to live orchestras, the LA Philharmonic. We've done it at the Hollywood Bowl, I think 4 times a year
You're breaking up a little bit, so and breaking up
2
is hard
years
to do.
ago now.
So I'm going to wait until the buffering stops a little bit because you are breaking up a little bit.
We did it at Wembley, 2 sold out shows at Wembley Arena.
Ken, you're breaking up a lot. So what might
Because I
help?
don't see you either.
Yeah, what might help is if you close out and come back in. That helps sometimes. So why don't you just leave the studio, come back in, and it might help.
Okay, because I see you again now, and I'm back. But
you're back. I think we both hexed it when I said Oogie Boogie. It's that Nightmare Before Christmas hex. So you
could be. I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Saying,
we don't.
After we said Mark Fendroff, that you mentioned that you've done a lot of concert versions of this.
Yeah, that we just call it the gift, the gift that keeps on giving. I was saying, because we do the concert versions. I was saying we've done it in Wembley a couple of years ago, Wembley Arena in London. 2 sold out shows. Scotland, Ireland. We've done it at the Bank of California Stadium last year, where Billie Eilish joined us as Sally, and very exciting. But it is the gift that keeps on giving. I've done all the recording since day one for the, but I stuck with it because now, of course, it's much more beneficial. But also, it's been me the whole time, which is great.
Well, I'm such a fan of Tim Burton's, and it seems like it was just yesterday and it wasn't. I'm sorry to say that the film opened, because I went to see it the day that it opened, and I'm sure if I could be wrong, but imagine being in your shoes, you get this incredible opportunity. You do this film, and the film opens, and it goes. Earlier this week, I interviewed David Bean, who was in the original West Side Story, and he was just asked to do a cameo in the reimagining, and he also, I refer to it as the gift that keeps on giving. He's done over 700 productions since 1961 of West Side Story. But could you imagine having done this film, putting it in a can, seeing it in movie theaters, that you would be doing these concerts this many years later?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, the cult following for it had started before I even knew about it. I was doing a production of Three Penny Opera with Reprise in LA. And the stage crew were a lot of young kids. They were kind of goth, and they were wearing black. And the guy comes up to me, this young kid, he goes, "Excuse me, can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You're Ken Page, right?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You were Oogie Boogie and Nightmare Before Christmas, dude." I said, "Yes, dude, I was." And he proceeded to tell me how there's a lot of clubs in LA at that time that the movie was a big deal for these young goth kids. He said, and every Saturday night, at the end of the night, they would play the Oogie Boogie song. He said, and that's how we knew it was the end of the evening. They've been doing it for years. I had no idea any of this stuff was happening at all. Went to Tokyo to do an appearance connected with the film. And again, I've been there twice now, but this was the first time. And I had no idea. There was a whole shop of jewelry that was just Nightmare Before Christmas stuff. When I went back this last time to do the concert live, Danny Elfman and all of us went. And again, the audience was crazy. You just don't know. You're not out there, so you don't know. And it keeps growing because it's growing by generations now. You get the parents who saw it back in the 90s.
Horror Picture Show status.
Yes. Yeah. In that kind of vein, and it keeps growing, and it's wonderful. And thank God.
Well, I like to begin my shows with we've already jumped in, but I start my shows with a random question that I don't even look at before the show starts. So I'm pulling a random question here. Believe it or not, I haven't even looked at it. And the question I'm going to ask you tonight is if you could know when and how. This is an interesting question. So it's a shocking question. If you could know when and how you are going to die, would you want to know?
No, I would not want to know. Because for me, my philosophy of living, I'm a Buddhist and I chant and so forth, is to live in the moment, you know, and really try as much as you can, or as much as we can, be as fully present in the moment as you can be. And somehow, I think there's a good side to maybe knowing that you would live your life and try to do all the things you want to do. But I sort of live that way anyway. So I wouldn't want to know that the end was nigh, you know. I'd rather just go on, and hopefully one night I'll go to sleep and dream of Hugh Jackman or something. and I'll wake up with Hugh Jackman, you know. And
well,
it'll
that
be
happens
really
quite often with me. Years ago, you know, I'm going to share this story since you bring him up. So years ago, I won a contest on Sirius XM radio, and they were interviewing him on entertainment radio. Entertainment Tonight had started a Sirius XM radio program, and I go and I'm sitting in the audience, and he is staring at me, and I'm staring at him, and afterwards he comes up to me and he says, "Hello, mate." He says, "You look very familiar." He said, "I think I know you." And I said, "We dated in high school." And he fell off of his chair.
I love it.
And I said, of course I'm joking. Of course I'm joking. Of course I'm joking.
He's a lovely guy. I did one.
He's just so nice.
The Gypsy of the Year, I think, one year when they were celebrating the Wiz, and I sang "Be a Lion," whatever.
Oh,
and I went backstage
to I was there.
Oh, you were there, right?
And we did
to do a crossover backstage, and coming in my direction was Hugh Jackman, and he stopped me and he gave me this big hug, and he said, "That was great. That was exciting." And I'm thinking to myself, I can't believe I'm hugging Hugh Jackman. But he's so unaffected and so like really right there. And it wasn't one of those like, "Oh, you did a great job." You know, he really was genuine. And I walked away thinking, I can't wait to tell everybody I hugged Hugh Jackman today. But he seems, and from all accounts, he's such a lovely guy. And in a company, I'm told, he's a great leader in a company.
I'd like to say that he was hugging you.
Well, I'll take that.
Yeah. And, you know, I want to ask, you know, and I hope you, and I love the fact that you say that you live your life in the moment. And I have so many friends who are Buddhist, and I love that philosophy. When did you become a Buddhist, and when did that happen in your life?
You know, I think a friend of mine, Nina Resnick, another lawyer in New York, told me years ago, she said, "Doll," she always calls me Doll. "Doll, are you a Buddhist?" And at the time I said no. She goes, "Well, you should look into it," she said, "because I think you live that way." What happened was I was living in Los Angeles, and it often happens with people in Los Angeles. It was just a really down time. It was very hard. I wasn't working very much out there, and I was just starting to feel very compressed. Yeah. And a wonderful acting teacher who's also a friend, Diana Castle, who is a practicing Nichiren Buddhist. And I told her, I said, "Diana, I'm just having, you know, it's not good, and I don't know what to do, and I feel like I'm not valued, and blah, 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 blah." She said, "Listen, I'm going to give you a few books, and I want you to read them. I hope they will help you. If you want to, obviously you don't have to read them if you don't want to." She gave me Buddha in the Mirror, which is a wonderful book, which I recommend to anybody, whether you want to become a Buddhist or not, of course. And it's terrific. And I can tell you, Richard, seriously, it turned my life around, because I had been raised with the mentality of, you better do it now, because tomorrow it might all be gone. And there's a positivity to that, but it makes you live in a mindset of lack rather than living in a mindset of plenty. That there will always be, it'll always be, there's always joy, there's always light. You live in that thing of, I better soak up the light now because tomorrow it may be dark. Well, it may be, but if you don't think that way, possibly you might stave it off a little bit longer, right? And prescribing to Nichiren Buddhism really gave me a practice. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 14 years, and that's grade school, high school, and 2 years of college. And it gave me a practice that allowed me to breathe. That's what I like to say so that everybody can relate. It allowed me to breathe. It allowed me to say, I can and I will, and therefore it will be, so on and so forth. And once I really adopted that way of thinking, everything started to change. everything started to change. And it really sent me in a direction of, first of all, it's okay. It's just the reality of the moment. Make the best of it and go forward, you know. And once I was thinking that way, everything started to better and lighten, and I made decisions that made my life happier because I wasn't feeling like I was in the dark. I was in the light. And that's what it really did for me. And I continue to practice. And, you know, I'm not a devout because, you know, I went to, like I said, Catholic school. It was like we went to mass every day. So it's hard for me to do anything that I have to do every day and have to be. But I've taken from it, as I have from many other things I've, you know, experimented with philosophically and spiritually in my life. And I take from it what I know works for me. And I use it. And I find that I'm growing into it more than trying to grab it and hold it. I'm growing into it as I get older. More.
I want to go back, Ken. I always like to go back to the 5-year-old self, because to me, the 5-year-old self is the purest self. That's before life begins to tell you who you should or should not be, before layers get added on. Teachers start telling you who you should or should not be. Can you tell us a little bit about the 5-year-old Ken Page and where you were growing up, about your home life? And did you grow up in an artistic household? Did you grow up with music surrounding you? Because you've got this such a great, you know, rich musical voice. And I want to know where you found that voice to begin with.
Well, I'll start by saying I sang my first public song in kindergarten. We did a puppet show, and the little girls did a fashion show. And I guess the guys did too. I don't remember really. But anyway, I could talk well. And, you know, I wasn't afraid. And I remember the teacher saying, now, you know, you're going to have to. I was like, I got this. You know what I mean? And I did the puppet voice and the whole thing. And then I came out from behind the puppet stage and I sang Easter Parade, you know. So that was the first time. And of course, you know, as we all talk about, there's something that happens when you get that response from people. You're sort of validated in a certain kind of way. But I was very lucky in that my mother was a single mom, and I was surrounded by all of these amazing, wonderful, I guess they were just adults, but to me, I call them older people, but they were just, you know, regular adults. But I was surrounded by, you know, when they say it takes a village, my mother was young, so a lot of people contributed. My grandmother, we were in her home for a few years at the beginning, and she was amazing. Segueing that into the musical idea, my whole family is very, I don't want to say animated, because that usually gives people the wrong impression. They're very entertaining, there's our word, right? People, they always were. My grandmother said if she hadn't done whatever else she did in her life, she would have gone on the stage, and she could have. My mother sang a bit. She dated Ike Turner for a while. Thank God she didn't stick with it like Tina did, but, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the house, and I talk about this and will in my show at 54 Below, that I grew up in a house with all kinds of music. There was gospel music. We listened to Mahalia Jackson and so on. And then my mother was young, so there was Jackie Wilson and da-da-da. And as the years went on, there were the Temptations and the Supremes and so forth. June Christie, my mother also loved. She also loved Dave Brubeck. So I had this really eclectic sense of music growing up. You know, she loved Harry Belafonte. You know, and these weren't the regular kind of, you know, she was a little bit of a bohemian. So it was kind of when I came into theater, and especially when I got to New York, I realized that I had this background of this kind of music, this mind catalog of music that a lot of people didn't have, because they either didn't listen to any, you know, or they listened to, you know, of course, I listened to Broadway show albums once I became aware of all of that obsessively, you know. But I also, at the same time, discovered Barbra Streisand, and at the same time discovered, you know, years later, Roberta Flack, and so on. So there was this, I always had this diverse, eclectic sense of musicality. For me at 5, to your question, I think I was a very, you know, we say precocious. I don't think, of course, I'm not the one to judge it, but I don't think I was precocious, but I was smart. I was smart. And because I didn't come out of an environment where they stifled you and you know, slapped your hand for doing things or told you to be quiet or go sit in the corner, children should be heard. Yeah. I didn't get upbringing. My upbringing was very much about, what did you say? Say it again. Let me hear what you said. Or did you see that? But he can sing. You know, my grandmother used to say, that boy is going to be president one day, or something like that. Because it was and everybody in the neighborhood was like that. They took time with me. And I think now that I'm of an age, I realize more than ever how all of those older people invested themselves in me. They saw something in me, I think, that they knew was curious, because a lot of the kids were running up and down the street, you know, playing. I wanted to sit with them and talk to them. And they would tell me stories, and they'd say, yeah, when I was growing up, we had a peach tree in our backyard. We had it. And I would go, did you see it grow? Which they would just look at me like, what a question. You know, like, and then they would tell me how their father planted it and they watched it grow their whole life. So I got all of these great stories, and it allowed me to be as innocent as you can be, considering that we were not wealthy. You know, we lived in an area like my mom always talked about how we didn't realize how poor we were because we were having such a great time and there was so much love and support for each other. When I think back on it, we were doing better than some. There were people who were absolutely dirt poor. They had nothing, you know. We didn't, our situation wasn't really like that, but you saw it, so you knew what the possibilities were. My grandmother used to go, she did domestic work for a living, and she would go when she did someone's house or whatever, and she would take their clothing and toys and things like that, and she put it in the trunk of her car. And we all lived on this car street in St. Louis, and she'd come in the car,
I think we lost you again, Ken. Ken, I would like you to leave the room and come back in. So let's see if that will clear this up for just a moment. So if you could just try leaving and coming back.
And she explained to me, which has always stuck with me. She said, there are kids. Okay.
If you can hear me,
that may help. I know I'm back. I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, leave the room and come back in. That may clear up the problem. And this happens sometimes with the bad connection, everyone. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to do that now.
Okay, great. Okay, hopefully that'll clear everything up, and we'll have a better connection when he comes back in. And wow, do I love this man. So I hope you're all having a good time so far. And I'll read some of your comments while I'm waiting for him to come back in. Sue says, I think I worked with Ken on a reading on a musical downtown long ago. Yes, let's see. Tasha Lombardi says, my husband loves his voice. His voice is phenomenal. Tasha, come to Feinstein's 54 Below. He's just absolutely phenomenal. I'm looking forward to that, seeing that concert. Let's see here. Hopefully he'll be back in just a moment. I hope he's able to get back in. We'll see as soon as he comes back into the room. I hope he's able to get back in. He is amazing. Here he is. Let's see. Ken?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, you're clear now, so let's hopefully that this goes well. So you were saying that growing up in St. Louis with this curiosity that you had.
Yeah, and it just, I think the older people there sensed it, you know, so they invested in me. That's what I was really getting to. And I think that enabled me at that young age to really absorb a lot.
Now, after that first puppet show and singing in this, did you have opportunities in school? I mean, some schools had, programs and arts and education. Was that your experience or not?
It was. It's interesting how it started because they used to take us, of course, this is now we're talking the middle 60s into the late 60s. They would take about 6 of us over to we were in an all-black Catholic school. They would take us all in a station wagon over to another school, which was all white, that had a chorus and the whole thing. And this wonderful nun, Sister Ruth Cecilia, who's Lois Zitzman, she left the comic, Sister Ruth Cecilia, and we sang what they would call the Marian choristers. So seventh and eighth, I think fifth, sixth grade, something like that, they would take us over there every Friday and we rehearse. And then you do Christmas concerts, you know, the usual do that. And in seventh or eighth grade, I think it was for me, she was transferred to our school. And she came to our school and we had no kind of arts programs or anything like that. And this, when they talk about one teacher changing a life, this wonderful woman she begged musicians to come and teach. She begged up instruments. People donated instruments. She started, there was a big thing in St. Louis called the Bellarmine Speech League, which was a competitive intramural speech thing. She got us in that, which we had never been. We ended up taking all kinds of awards and ribbons and things. So she introduced our school and therefore our community to the arts in that real applicable way. We did, if you can believe, for eighth grade, we did Snow White.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I always love to tell you because it was an all-black school, you know. But she was a very, and she was very, but she knew what she was doing, you know. She knew it wasn't by chance, yeah. And she said, "Oh, we're going to do Snow White," and everybody went, "Sister Ruth, you're a mess."
When did you first become aware that show business?
Sister Ruth, you're just a mess. She goes, "Why can't we do it? Why not?" And that really set me on the road because of our high school, where they also had a music program and everything, which we wouldn't have had otherwise. I hope you don't get interrupted. Yeah.
No, when did you first become aware that show business was something that you could pursue? I think we've lost him again. I hope. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the connection is bad, I guess. You know,
yeah.
I can't really.
No, sorry.
No, it's okay. I went to see at the Muni, where I've done 43 shows, I like to say. But
God bless you. Can you explain to everyone what the Muni is for those who don't know? Because it's an
the Muni is a 12,000 seat outdoor theater in St. Louis. It used to, their motto used to be the biggest, the grandest in the country, or something like that. But at any rate, it is, because it's 12,000 seats, 1,000 and some of which are free always at the top of the theater. They're great seats because you see the panorama of the thing. The stage is 150 feet wide. I mean, it's a huge, huge place. But the Muni has been there since like 1910, something like that. I mean, it's been there a very, very long time. Anyway, I got in the ensemble there. But before then, my best friend's mom, Luther, his mother, Elizabeth Clark, took us to see Oklahoma at the Muni. And Robert Horton was playing Curly, and he came out on the stage on a horse. This they could do at the Muni, right? Yes, there's a whole cornfield behind him. And he came out on a horse. And I was smitten. And the next thing I think I probably saw some things in between, like New Moon, Student Prince, or something. They were still doing operettas. But I saw Pearl Bailey and Cab Calloway in Hello, Dolly. Now, this was at a time when they would shut a show down. You know, they would also have summer breaks in New York back then. Mm-hmm. And they would bring the show to St. Louis for a week. Now, of course, the theater was so big, they'd make a month's worth of, revenue in a week there. But they brought the show to St. Louis, and twice I got to see Pearl Bailey and Cab Calloway in Hello, Dolly. And that was when I really thought to myself, not only do I love this, but if these are African-American at that time, just Black people, I can do this. There's something, there's a place for me there. So then I started looking and learning and going back at the history of shows that had been on Broadway with Black people and on and on and on. And watching the Tony Awards, I'll never forget laying on the floor watching Walk Him Up, the opening number, Pearly that year. And, among other things, of course, Applause and Coco and all these other shows. And I fell in love with it. And I really realized, of course, from early on when I was in grade school that I could sing. And I was being given voice lessons early. And by the time I got to high school, it was, of course, more pronounced. And I was doing the musicals, as you do. Freshman year, we did Funny Girl. I was not Fanny. Freshman year. I could have done it. I could have done it. Hello, Gorgeous. I could have done it. But I was the Ziegfeld tenor, actually. I sang His Love Makes You Beautiful. And the second year, we did Hello, Dolly. interestingly enough. And I played Horace Vandergelder. And third year we did Oliver, and I played Fagin. And senior year we did Fiddler on the Roof, and I played Tevye. And,
wow.
And what was so great about this, not only that I, as an African American, was playing Tevye, but it was also a story, as we all know, about the expulsion of the Jewish community from Russia. This was a Catholic school, and back then, all of those divisions were very clear. Oh. So for me to be a Black young man playing Tevye at a Catholic school was a big deal. People came from all around the city to see it because it was, you know, that thing. And that by that point, of course, I was steeped, you know, in all of it, and went on to college to study theater at Fontbonne University in St. Louis. And, you know, at the same time I was doing 2 years of college there, I was also in the ensemble at the Muni. So I was getting professional experience with professionals. We did Fiddler on the Roof, and Herschel Bernardi played Tevye. We did Take Me Along with Gene Kelly. Amazing people, you know, that you got to watch and learn from. And the show that made me say, that's it, I'm going, they brought in Seesaw from New York. The Broadway cast came in, and something about the show touched me. You know, I loved theater, I loved Broadway, I loved all this stuff, but something about it, and I still sing Seesaw in my show, or some parts of it, or a little bit of it. I use the music, as I will again, May 4th, because it just somehow always takes me back to that purest place, as you were talking about being 5. It takes me back to being 17, 18, and saying, that's it. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And something about the dum, blum, blum, blum. I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
Absolutely. Now, was it at the Muni that you got your equity card?
It was. In those days, you got it. I got it in 2 parts. One summer I got one half, and the second summer I got the other half. So by the time I went to New York, I came to New York with my equity card.
So what was the official break off that you got the equity card with?
I think it was the second year, so that would have probably been Bittersweet. Remember, it was an opera, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, with Roberta Peters, and Terry Saunders was in it, and that was the show that actually I think I got my card, because I'd done the others. That summer, I think we did Man of La Mancha and Bittersweet. The summer before, we did Take Me Along and Fiddler on the Roof, and you know. But that second summer was when I got enough points, I think it's called, enough points.
Yes, I remember. Well, that's the way that I did it. It was getting those equity points, and you worked for those points. But
oh, baby.
But getting the, you know, for some, getting the equity card, it was for me the Holy Grail. Was it the Holy Grail for you as well?
Oh, absolutely. Because I came to New York not trying to find a way in. I had a way in. I had my equity card. So I could go to equity calls right away. And I went to everything. I'm going to tell you, I went to things they were not going to put me in, you know, but I went anyway because I figured.
And I went to audition for Ain't Misbehavin', and they said, I think you're at the wrong audition.
But they gave you points for showing up, right?
They gave me points for showing up. They said, thank you for coming. I arrived in New York in 1979. So that's when I arrived in New York.
Well, you know what I would get a lot in the beginning? I would get a lot of people saying to me, you know, you're really great, but there's just nothing in the show for you. And some of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, I couldn't be offended because I knew there was nothing in the show for me. But I was so in love with it, I'd go in anyway. I remember auditioning for the national tour of Seesaw. And I wanted to do it so bad. My roommate, Carol Ann Bosch, got cast. And I went with her and I sang, and they were like, we don't know, you know. And it was a diverse cast, but there just wasn't anything in the show for me. I so wanted to do Godspell, and I went in, and they said, you're terrific. And I sang All Good Gifts, that terrific, wonderful, beautiful song. And they said, well, that's great. Unfortunately, the role that's open is not that role. It's another role, Harvey or whatever, the kind of character guy. And they said, but we're going to keep your name because we think you'd be great. And as soon as something opens up, we're going to call you. And you get you like that close. I was almost, but that was kind of the response I got. So while it could be discouraging, I always found it encouraging, because people would never say, well, I shouldn't say never, they certainly would, but most of the time they would give me something. They would say, well, you know what, the role we're looking for, the guy has to be this, or he needs to be that, or we were looking for somebody to fill in, they got to fit in the box or anything, you know. But they always sort of encouraged me to keep going. And I always remember that. And the first job I got was with a children's theater company.
Isn't that funny how that happens? I mean, my first professional job in New York was also children's theater.
Mm-hmm. I think that's often the case, certainly back in the 70s, because, you know, there was more of it, for one. And I think the company I worked with was Fanfare, Children's Ensemble, and they were lovely. I always like to talk about, because they were salt of the earth people. Joan Shepard had been the understudy in yeah, you know Joan, yeah. And her husband, yes. Evan Thompson, was in Mahogany and so forth. And they were wonderful people. They took me in and they taught me about the New York theater. We were doing Huckleberry Finn and it was great and everything. We toured in a bus, you know, the whole thing, you got in the van and you drove around upstate New York and so forth. The furthest west we went was Detroit, you know. And, but they lived in this like warehouse, which I guess we'd now call a loft, but it was filled with all kinds of props and scenery. And then you were kind of like, what do you live in? And then you go in one area and it was like, oh, it's an apartment, you know. But they were really, like I said, they were salt of the earth people. And I remember when I opened and when I was playing in Guys and Dolls, they came to the theater and I came out of the theater one night and they were standing kind of over to the sidewalk in front and they were kind of huddled together. And of course, I thought, oh my God, it's Joan and Evan. And she said to me, and she wasn't being, you know, she says, we didn't know if you'd remember us. And I thought,
my God.
How could I not remember you? You know, you're the people that made me feel like I could actually be here. And it was one of those wonderful, beautiful moments where and she cried. She said, we're so proud of you. You just, you know, you're in the show, you're great. And we just are so proud. I said, well, please don't ever forget that you are the first people. Oh, you made your Broadway debut with Guys and Dolls. I said, yeah, but you are the first people that hired me in New York City. So please, please, please don't forget that. And I will always tell people. And they were so dear. They were just, you know, because they loved Broadway and theater like I did. And they had found their niche in doing children's theater. But they had come from, you know, like I said, she had understudied and Member of the Wedding and so on. And they were just lovely, you know. And they're probably not with us anymore, but I try to say their names whenever I can.
Yes, well, God bless you and God bless them.
Absolutely.
So how long did it take you from coming to New York before you got what you thought was your first big break in New York?
How long?
How long?
Well, not long. You know, I mean, I like to say I did all the things people do, but I did it in a very compressed, you know, I worked at the Department of Social Services in the Xerox department. But out of that, I got Huckleberry Finn. So I wasn't there very long. But let's see, I got to New York in, I think, 75. And by late 74 into 75. And by the time Guys and Dolls was in 1976. And I had done a tour of the last national company of Pearly before that. So it really only took maybe a year before I was actually working professionally on a tour. And then, you know, and we started out the Coconut Grove Playhouse. I'm sure you're
Can you take our viewers
Say that
there?
Again. Yes.
Can you take our viewers to 1975 New York City? Because I came to New York in 1979. It was a very different New York from what it is now. So,
oh my God, yes.
When you arrived in New York, was New York what you expected it to be?
Yes, because, you know, I was very aware. You know, I wasn't, you know, I didn't come out of the cornfield. You know what I mean? I was very aware.
I did.
Oh, you did?
I was expecting. The way that I describe it, I said I was expecting breakfast at Tiffany's and Barefoot in the Park, and what I got was Taxi Driver and Midnight Cowboy. Yes. Yeah.
It was very dangerous. But to me, when I think back on that, in my show Page by Page, I do this song from Seesaw called My City, and what it talks about is exactly that thing, that the city is, you know, all the different things that it was at that time. And I found all of that really exciting. I mean, I didn't realize, because I was dumb and young, and I didn't realize how dangerous it was. You know, I lived at 73rd and between Amsterdam and Columbus, and at the, you know, was Needle Park.
Needle
was
Park.
right there at 70,
Yes.
between 72nd and 3rd, you know, and who knew that? I mean, I just was like, oh, wow, look, colorful people, you know. But it really was Needle Park. I mean, people were, you know, shooting up heroin and everything. But that was the city. I mean, it didn't seem odd to me. It was just, that was it. And I don't even think, I mean, I think probably people had been there longer or who maybe were older realized that the city was having its struggles at the time. But I think for most people my age coming there, that's just the New York we came into, right? I mean, it wasn't like we had something else to compare it to. And it was exciting. I mean, you think about it, shows like a Chorus Line and AIN'T MISBEHAVIN, these shows came out of that time. So it was a very visceral time. I mean, it wasn't, in a lot of ways, no offense, but I preferred that time to this time.
You know what?
It was more alive.
I will tell you what I loved about that period that I miss. Here we are doing what we're doing because of social media, but I preferred when we didn't have social media. I love the fact that people talk to each other. When you stood in line to go to a movie, I loved going to a movie theater when it was one movie instead of 6 different movies, because everyone was there to see the same film. And everybody, there was an excitement. It was an event, and people stood in line together. They talked to each other. Going to an audition, you would meet people, and people would talk about what was happening at the auditions.
Oh,
I missed all that. It was just a different scene.
Yeah, it was very.
And I want to ask, you know, Frank Langella in his book talks about that first time of walking from the darkness into the light. But I want to go a step further. And that first opening night for you on Broadway, that is the dream of every actor. So that first opening night for you and what that experience was like. And were you able to really drink it all in and experience the moment of what was happening? Or was it an out-of-body experience for you?
No, I really was able to drink it in again, because since I was a kid, I had been living and breathing Broadway and listening to albums and reading liner notes and on and on and on. So, and of course, my first Broadway show, my debut, was in Guys and Dolls. So it wasn't like a brand new show that you didn't know and some stuff. It was like the heartbeat of the musical theater, this show, right? It was so there was that. And I remember it being, the only thing I would say was out of body about it is I couldn't believe it was me. You know what I mean? I was in this show and we had already been out of town. So forth and so on. And I had the great fortune of them writing, and he wrote it wonderful for me. It was Thunder. It really something, to my knowledge, since then, I certainly didn't know then, that happens very often. I mean, it was pretty amazing. The next day, or a day or two after, I think it was the next day, Clive Barnes wrote this piece in the Times. I didn't know who Clive Barnes was. So, I mean, it was no big deal to me. People were like, have you read the piece that Clive Barnes wrote about you to you this morning? I said, no, who is? And they were like, oh, you are young, aren't you? You know, and it was really quite wonderful. It was pretty terrific. And I don't know if I have a copy of that. It's somewhere. But at any rate, what he did was he threw the doors open to New York and to Broadway and said, here's somebody who not only is terrific and great, but belongs right here with us on Broadway doing what he does. And that certainly brought me to a lot of people's attention who may not have, you know, necessarily been that interested, but it really made a big difference. So my opening, the first thing I remember about it, because there were like 6 people in Guys and Dolls that had been in Pearly. Robert Guillaume, Norman Donaldson, who played Adelaide, Robert played Nathan. There was this core group that we had just been working together for the past year. So it had even that much of an overlay. We were all doubly happy because we were doing yet another show together. It was like a rep company of a sort. And it made the opening even more so because I was in the chorus of Pearly, you know, and here I was all of a sudden stepping forward. So there was this support system that was standing there going, well, what the hell is happening to you, you know? And they knew more than I did. They knew what was happening, you know. It was amazing.
I want to come full circle. You're coming back to New York. You're going to be at Feinstein's 54 Below. I'm going to be there cheering you on.
Oh, I'm so glad.
I cannot wait to see you in person again. And so the show there's so much to talk about and sing about too. And you've got the amazing Richard J. Alexander behind the scenes.
The mighty Zozar, I call it.
Yes. So what can audiences, everyone who's watching now, I'd love to see all of you there, and I'm sure Ken would too.
Oh, God, yes. And we're live streaming, so people can live stream it as well.
Yes, but we'd like to see you in the seats as well.
Yes, so, I would. I would prefer to see you in the seats. I want thunderous. I want like opening night of Guys and Dolls.
Yes. So what can audiences expect with this show that's coming up at
Feinstein? You know, I thought about it, and I had different levels of thinking about it. And finally, I said to Richard, because at first I was like, I want to do new material, and I want to do all the old stuff, and I want to run it. And then I thought to myself, I don't know how many more times, and I don't say this with any malice or chagrin or anything. I don't know how many more times I'm going to do it in New York. You know, I'm older and it's a lot of work and I don't live there and blah, blah, blah. So I said, I want this particular evening to be a celebration, not just for me and the fact that I'm doing it, but, you know, we meet now most of the time for memorials, funerals, sad occasions. We come together and we do what we do as theater people, and we raise people up and we send them off and we do all these things. But it isn't a lot of occasion, especially in the last 2 years, for us to gather for just joy and celebration. So I said, I want this night to be joyous and celebratory. I want people there who want to be there. I want them to come and have a great time. So I said, well, then I must do all of my stuff. I have to go back and look at the program and say, you know, do the things you did on Broadway. Why not? I've tried to repurpose them in some kind of way. It's sort of like West Side Story. They're the same songs, but they're put in a different vernacular than they might be. They're not done just here's this number from the show. There's a story attached and so on and so forth, which is great. But, and I said to Rick, I love. I don't want to do anything like, well, this is a great song because. I only want to do music I love because I want it to be imbued with that energy. A lot of the songs I'm singing, I have been singing. They haven't necessarily been singing them in New York. I've done, you know, other club dates elsewhere. One song I will say that I'm singing is Soon It's Gonna Rain, which is from the Fantastics. And I started singing it about 2 years ago at the Bistro in St. Louis. And we do a little thing with it, but it's so beautiful. And I always loved it. I've done the Fantastics. I played one of the fathers before, and I've directed it and on and on. And I thought, let's do that, because that's something I feel. And it really, I want to take people to that Glen in the Woods, as the song says, and some other things that I'm just really, and I'm not trying to do an autobiographical show. I'm just saying these are songs I love, and I think they'll be interesting. And there's one other song I'm doing that I did, and Ain't Nothing But the Blues, which was a show that ran on Broadway. And I don't think a lot of people got to see it. You know, but it was at the Vivian Beaumont, and then we moved down to the Ambassador. And my dear friend Ron Taylor was the star of it. He was the lead and one of the producers. It was his project. And he had said to me, I went to see the show, and I said, this is nice, you know. And I said, look, if you ever get tired or you want to take a break, call me. I'd love to do it. So the occasion came up. Unfortunately, he was not well in the hospital, but he sent message to me through Andre DeShields, who called me up and said, Ken Page, this is Andre DeShields. I said, really? I didn't know that, you know. And he said, Ron Taylor has suffered a stroke. And he told me, he didn't know how to reach you. And he told me to tell you that he needs you to come and drive the bus, that he can't do it now. And he can't think of anyone he'd like to do it more than he would like you to do it. And I thought, wow, first of all, I was very touched because it was his show, you know, not only just being in it, it was his baby. And I thought to myself, okay, this is great. I'm coming back to Broadway and it's going to be terrific. But mostly I want to do it for him. So I said to myself when it came around time for the show for May 4th, I thought there's a great number, and I won't give it away, but there's a great number that I did in Act 2 of the show that was the most fun I think I've ever had. Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat was great, but this is a blues song. And I will say it's by Willie Dixon and Muddy Waters recorded it. And I hope to have the best time singing it because I haven't done it since I was in the show. So things like that we're doing. And I'm just very excited to get to do it, you know, to get to bring some joy. We've all had a very tough 2 years, you know, and Broadway is back. I was originally supposed to be there in September, which is when Broadway was just kind of reopening. And then we had another dip, with, of course, with Omicron. Mm-hmm. So the fact that this is now happening now, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that nothing comes up between now and May. No. I want it to just be a celebration. And I want everybody to walk away going, that's what it feels like to have a great time in a club.
Well, you know me, I'm all about celebrations. So
yes.
That's what it's about.
Yes.
So first of all, every day I choose a word that I focus on each day. Mm-hmm. And the word I chose today was harmony. And I want to ask you, what does harmony mean to you? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of harmony?
The first thing that comes to mind truly is difference in unison. If that makes sense.
Oh, yes, it does.
Difference in unison, because harmony is not made of the same things. Harmony is made of different things working together.
That's great.
And that's what I think about, and harmonious and all those kind of things. I think that's what, again, like I was saying, living in the moment and so forth, that's what I strive for. And I try now, as much as possible, to only have harmonious environments be part of my life, harmonious people who are different and yet in the same voicing, you know?
I began the show by giving a quote about Carol Channing, and I'm going to give another one. She said, in order for a show to be successful, you need people from different walks of life to come together. Because, you know, one time I was doing a country club show, and it just was horrible. And I called her after the show, and she says, well, you know, Richard, country club audiences are the worst audiences in the world. They're not there to see you. They're there to see each other.
Exactly. ain't it the truth?
And she said, they're all the same person. You need people from different walks of life to come together. So Ken, I end my shows by doing my homage to James Lipton inside the Actors Studio. So I've got some fun questions. I hope they're fun for you. So I'm going to begin by asking you, for next week, what are your top 4 goals leading up? Well, let's say not next week, but what are your top 4 goals leading up to opening night for your show?
Top 4 goals. I missed the last thing you said. Say that again.
Leading up to opening night for your show coming up.
Relaxation. I want to walk into it relaxed and breathing. I don't want to be jittered and nervous, because that could be the case. That's not how I want it, you know. So there's that. Harmony, and I mean that sincerely, harmony, because there will be all these different pieces that will be coming together to be the thing that the show will be. Celebration, and I couldn't be more serious about it. I picked things that obviously there's an opening that gives a little bit of a tribute to some of to Carol and Pearl and all these other people that have, you know, lived in the shoes of Dolly Levi. Not giving too much away, but it's just a little bit of a tribute to them. That's 3. I have 1 more, right? And I hope I find a husband.
I'm going to tell you, there's a great line from a Mae West film.
Yes.
Where her maid comes in and says, I'm going to go out and get myself a husband. And Mae West says to her, honey, leave the husbands alone and get yourself a single man.
Ah, yes. Wise always. Always.
So I'm going to pull, this is from a calendar, and I've used this in other shows. And this is one of my favorite passages from a calendar on my desk. And it says, my heart longs for peace and cries out for justice. Today's self-love action. How can I be a force of peace in the world today while also promoting justice? And I ask that question of you.
Yeah. How can I do it, or how do I think about
Yes.
it?
How do you feel that you can be a force of peace in the world today while also promoting justice?
Well, I think, fortunately, people like us are in the position to be that. Because I think when you do what you do with joy in your heart, you're already being a force for peace. Because I really do believe there's an exchange. That's why I love the live theater so much. There's an exchange that happens between human beings that's beyond the material, or it's something in the ether. It's something spiritual. It truly is. And I think that's why people feel the things they feel in the theater or in a cabaret room. As far as justice, I think at this point, especially in my life, I speak, and I hope this doesn't sound egotistical, I don't mean it that way, but I speak with the voice of justice. I came from a time, coming to New York in 1976, when it wasn't as easy for a gay person or an African-American performer. I've been very lucky in that I've gotten to do roles that many, many people of my race and everything have not gotten to do. The Muni offered me that, years and years and years of playing, all sorts of roles without regard, if you will, or without prejudice to the idea of my being African American. So justice for me is, as I say in my show, which you'll hear again, May 4th, I talk to a lot of young people now. I do a lot of Zooms, a lot of this, a lot of that, because I feel like I'm at the point in my life where I have to start. I've started certainly years ago, but giving back, telling the stories, being the griot. Because if you don't tell the stories, they end with you. And if you don't talk about what justice means, it doesn't happen. If you don't tell the younger people the stories of when there was less justice, even than there is now, you have to value things before you can really improve on them, if that makes sense, And I really do feel that way. And I was lucky to come along when there was the Pearl Baileys and the Diane Carrolls and the Sammy Davis Juniors, and the list goes on. These were people who were the first in line, the Sidney Poitiers, and people that I was lucky enough to meet and learn from. They taught my generation, therefore me, how to come to justice, because they had to do it in a circuitous way. They couldn't just go, bam, I want. They had to find a way to get justice, to be treated properly and fairly, and still fit in the system and move forward. Now, that isn't as important these days, and I'm happy about that. But at the same time, there's a certain grace to representing yourself in the world and asking for justice that I think is important, because I think it has to do with who you, the human being, are and how you influence other people. It's paramount to have justice, but the way you get it is also important. And I think I live in that, and I hope I stand for that. I try to. And the fact that I'm here and that I was there, God knows at least I was there, and I'm here,
I'm here. Good. That's great.
Absolutely. And justice has been, I've always stood up for myself. I can say that. And it got me in a lot of hot water sometimes because people wanted me to be more subservient and all sorts of things. And I thought, I wasn't raised that way. And I really wasn't. It wasn't something I had to become. I just was never taught to be that way. So for me, there was no option. And therefore, to ask for justice in any situation was what was natural for me. But when you do it, you're not aware sometimes that you're opening the door, or you're laying the ground for somebody else to walk on or to walk through that door just by demanding justice yourself. The next guy or lady behind you doesn't have to fight as hard, like the people in front of me would say to me, Sammy Davis, Diane Carroll, this is what it was. You don't have to do that. You go in there and you say and you do and you tell them, because we did that for you. Now I find myself saying to young people, you don't have to take that. You can walk in the room, just like they said to me, And I think that's where the idea, if you will, to wrap it, that's where the idea of justice comes into reality. Because it's easy to talk about the concept, but the actual is a very complex and personal thing.
That's great. That's wonderful. What is the most important action that you feel that you've ever taken in your career?
going to New York.
Okay.
Honestly,
Great.
you know, I mean, if I hadn't, everything would be different. I went to LA and I was, thank God, was able to work, but it didn't feel visceral for me. It was too removed. There were too many barriers, and it's different now even than it was when I moved there, which was '84. It's very different now than it was then. You know, the AIDS epidemic was just coming in, all sorts of things. I lost the train of thought, but ask me again. I was going to say something.
The most important action that you took in your
action,
career.
yes. And I think that was it, coming to New York, believing, and of course the simple act of getting on the train, which I did, was one thing, but believing there was a place for me and there was something that I wanted to do and I could be part of it, and following my spirit. That's what I would like to say, following my spirit, not my heart. That too, but more importantly, following my spirit. Because I think the theater and what we do, justice, harmony, all of those things lived in my spirit. It wasn't, it's like, I think Michelangelo was the one who said, it's not about carving something into the stone. It's about removing the stone so you can see the piece that's in there.
Yes.
And
now,
that's kind of how it felt.
You have been fortunate enough to work with so many incredible people in this business.
Yeah.
And they've been fortunate enough to work with you. But one person that you've worked with that you feel that propelled you up the ladder a little higher, whether it be in terms of your artistry or in terms of your career?
Wow. I have to think about that a minute. There were so many people. I would have to say, and this is only because it was in the beginning. There's been so many people. Ed Greenberg, who was the artistic producing director at the Muni in 1970s, you know, when I was there. Ed Greenberg gave me my first role, which was Stew Pot in South Pacific.
I played Stew Pot.
Did you? See,
yes,
Red, come on.
No, I played Stew Pot at the Hampton Playhouse.
Yes.
Up in New Hampshire.
Right.
Yes.
And
I'll send you the pictures.
Absolutely. And if I can find one, I'll send you one of me. Well, the thing that was great about it was he believed, because of course I was in college for theater and there were people there who knew me from my college. So I think there was a conversation had. But he gave me, you know, it was my first summer. I was in the ensemble, but right away I had a role. So I wasn't just the guy from the left singing the tenor part. I was Stew Pot. So it set me on a trajectory that was like, no, you play parts. You know, even if there's 3 lines, you get the 3 lines. And I never went into the theater thinking that I was going to have to be in the ensemble. I have nothing against the ensemble. Matter of fact, I always am happier with the ensemble. But I came into it with a mindset because of Ed Greenberg that said, you can play a part. I remember they called me and said, you have a costume fitting. And I said, for what? And they said, well, and the very gruff statement, said, well, you're Stew Pot, aren't you? And I said, I don't know. Am I? He says, oh, for God's sake, you have a costume appointment at 11 o'clock. And I got an Ed Greenberg, who was lovely, said, now, you're not going to disappoint me, are you? And I said, I hope not, you know. But he gave me, I would say, if I thought of somebody other than that teacher, of course, who taught me from the beginning, I would say Ed Greenberg, because he gave me my first job.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
And you don't have to give a specific answer, but just to think about what I'm going to ask you. And there's a reason I'm asking this question, because we've all been through difficult times in our lives and our careers. The question is, and then I'll explain, what is the most painful thing that you've gone through in your career? And how did you get to the other side? And again, I'm not asking for specifics because I am all about celebrating.
Yeah.
But I want to know specifically how you got through it.
Well, I will be specific because it's nothing I hide. I mean, I talk about it and have. Was never having been nominated for a Tony. The kind of roles, and I mean, this again may sound egotistical, I don't know. And at my age now, I don't care. But the kind of things that I did and how they came about, and I looked around me, I thought, well, gee, she got it and he got it and they got it and so-and-so got it. How did I get through these roles in this place at this time and never get nominated for a Tony? So it became a painful thing for a long time because I thought I deserved it. I thought I deserved it. Now, whether I would have won or not is another question, but I thought I deserved to be given that recognition. But how I got through it was I realized a lot of people deserved it. A lot of people didn't get nominated. A lot of people, some people didn't get it and went on, as I did, right? But at a point in time, I remember thinking to myself, stop feeling sorry for yourself and get on with your life. I mean, if it didn't happen, it didn't happen. The point is, there are people I knew, and this may sound a little bitter, but there are people I knew who had not only Tony nominations, but Tony Awards who weren't working. And I was. So I said to myself, the real deal is to be working. The recognition is wonderful, and it's great to have a Tony on your shelf, and it's great to have a framed nomination on your shelf. But better than any of that is to be working. And I was blessed to keep working, you know, and that's how I got through it. I just focused on the fact that I was working, and like I said, I'm still here. But it was painful. It was very painful, especially as the shows came along. That I thought, oh, this is it. This is it, you know. And then
I wasn't aware that you weren't Tony nominated until you told me. So,
well, you know, this is one of the things. I'm so glad you said that, because I have found that in most cases that I've been in, whether it's schools or teaching or here and there, people always say Tony nominated. I think I never want anyone to come up to me and go, no, you weren't. You're giving false information. So I always correct them. But I can tell you 98% of the time, people think I was nominated for Tony at some point, and they have their own show that they thought I was nominated for.
Well, in my mind, in my heart, you are. You're a winner. You're a winner. So what are you currently reading?
I'm currently reading I Was Better Last Night. Harvey Firestein's.
Harvey Firestein, yes, great.
Unfortunately, I've been so busy with stuff, I haven't been able to jump down into it like I want, but I'm traveling.
Well, the audio book just came out, so you can listen to it.
Yes, but I want to read it because I want to have my own, you know.
But can you think of a better title than that book?
Oh, well, it's Harvey. Of course, there's no better title.
But, you know what I mean? But that title resonates with every person in show business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it says something about him, about his humor, about his, you know, self-deprecating. It says it all in one title. You know, you were amazing. I was better last night. Which not only, hey, in some subversive way, it also says, you didn't see me, but I was really good last night.
That's
you know what I mean? Yeah. I love it.
Well, Tyne Daly tells a great story that when she was a young girl, her father took her to see James Earl Jones in The Great White Hope.
Yeah.
And she went backstage and she said, Mr. Jones, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And he said to her, you should have been here last night. It was a much better performance. And she
well,
said,
you know, it's often true.
But she said, Mr. Jones, I wasn't here last night. This is it. You know, this is all I have to go on. Yes.
Well, that's the beauty of the humility of someone as great as James Earl Jones, right? Every night, I would dare to say James Earl Jones is brilliant. Even at his worst, he's brilliant, right?
I know,
but
absolutely.
For the actor, the human being that he is, and he is such a lovely man, he would say, yeah, the night was good, but last night I really killed it, you know, or last week I had a performance that was, and that says a lot about who he is, like it does for Harvey.
Yes. So what have you lost this week that you would most like to retrieve?
My sanity.
Good answer.
Honey, I'm telling you, it was a little crazy this week.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm joking, but not completely.
No, but I love the answer.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there are moments where you think, okay, I need to refocus and just sort of get myself back on track. So there are moments where I thought, don't lose that, get that back. And, you know, you said, I'm going
humor.
Yeah.
What is something about this business that you will never understand?
Well, when I think about it, I have to almost departmentalize because theater and film and television are all so different, and I would have a different answer for each one. But overall, I would say that I will never understand is how some people that are so brilliant, and I'm not speaking about myself, say that first, can be overlooked or forgotten. Let's say forgotten, because there are people we all know that we have. I mean, the fact that Carol Channing passed, and the Oscars, and the people, even by obits that I read, never mentioned she'd been nominated for an Academy Award.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this is not a small thing. This woman was nominated for an Oscar, an Academy Award. And somehow it slipped through the cracks. Somehow when they did the people thing, the memoriam, she wasn't there. And I thought she was an Academy Award nominee. What is that? So, and we could name 1,000 instances where that's happened. That's one of the things I never quite understand, how, people are in, they're out, they're in favor, they're out of favor, they're forgotten. I just can't imagine when people make the kind of contribution, someone using her as an example, how would you ever not give her all of her props? And she's an example of many.
Absolutely. And this is my last question for you. Who deserves your love the most?
Me.
I was hoping you were going to say that. Ken.
Well, if you don't love yourself, how you gonna love anybody else? As RuPaul says,
That's
and
right.
That's the truth.
And he is so right. We're going to give away a prize, and it's going to be a surprise to the winner. So, but it's going to have Ken Page's name written all over it, and it's my friend Frances Shea who wins again. I'm so glad that you're here tonight. So, Frances, I will be in touch. And Frances, I think you should go online right now and get your tickets and tell them you want to sit at my table. So go ahead and do that. So anyway, I'm going to take this off. I'm going to make us a little larger there. Don't go anywhere for a moment, Ken. Okay. I have had a blast. I hope you have too.
Oh, I have, and thank you.
I want to thank everybody who showed up tonight. I know that I can speak for Ken when I say this. We don't take it lightly in this business when you show up. So thank you for spending an hour with us this evening. And I hope that you will all, either whether it be on live stream or whether it be in person, remember the show is going to be on May 4th at Studio 54. You can go to their website and order your tickets now. All the premium tickets are gone, but there are other seats available. So get those tickets available.
Come on, get some.
Get them. Join us. And I will be there too. And I'd love to see all of you. So, and Ken would love to see all of you as well. So please show up. If this was your first time here at Richard Skipper Celebrates, thank you all for showing up tonight. I hope it will not be your last time. My show is about celebrating. It's about celebrating artists and their body of worth. I do believe that there's so much cutting people down in this business that I want to elevate people. And that's what this platform is about. So if this is your first time here, I hope it will not be your last. Please consider subscribing, leaving a comment after tonight's show on YouTube about what you thought of tonight's show. Share this with your friends. Tell other people about the show. And I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and reach out to the 6th name that pops up and reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call, and let that person know what they mean in your life, because we never know what someone else is going through right now. And as my dear friend Sean Monagar always says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And I always say, if you're going to go out in a boat, make sure you bring a skipper along. So Ken, I'm going to leave the screen and I'm going to give you the final word. Yes. Anything you want to say about anything that we talked about tonight that you want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any final message that you want to put to all of our watchers tonight and all of our listeners later on the podcast. You've got the final word. Don't worry about how to end the show. As soon as you say goodnight, the final credits will roll, and I will see you in just a few weeks at Studio 54. I love you. You are truly the best, and you are a winner. I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you back.
Okay. Thank you.
I would just say this. I saw something by Ram Dass, and I heard it on Tyler Henry's show. He's a psychic. And he said, just remember, we're all just walking each other home. And I think that has struck the chord with me this week so profoundly. And it's so true. Remember that, because we're all born and we're all going to leave. And in between, we're just walking each other home. Have a good walk. Fill it with joy, with love, with kindness. We could use a lot of that these days. And know that you are loved and light shines on you every day.